I am Isabella Ross, 35 years old, owner of Serenity Grand Hotels and Pinnacle Catering. My brother Leo and I have always been close, surviving our parents' divorce and building our lives together. When he got engaged, I happily put down $65,000 as a deposit for his dream wedding at my finest venue. Then last week, his wedding planner called with news that shattered my heart. If you are watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you are from. Hit that like and subscribe button, and stay for a wedding disaster that taught me the true meaning of family and self-respect. Leo and I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Boston. He was only 2 years older than me, but he always took his role as big brother seriously. I remember how he would walk me to school every day, holding my hand at crosswalks and making sure the other kids never bullied me. We had that special sibling bond that some people never experience in their lifetime. Our childhood took a sharp turn when our parents divorced. I was 13 and Leo was 15. The split was messy, full of late-night arguments and slammed doors. Our father, Arthur, was a workaholic accountant who rarely made time for family dinners. Our mother, Susan, felt neglected and eventually found companionship elsewhere. Neither of them realized how their separation would impact us. After the divorce was finalized, our parents settled into a Cold War. They communicated only when absolutely necessary, using us as messengers. Tell your father he is late on the child support again. Or, ask your mother if I can pick you up an hour earlier on Sunday. Leo and I quickly learned to rely on each other instead of our distracted parents. The financial situation at home became strained. Mom had been a stay-at-home parent and suddenly needed to find work with outdated skills. Dad moved into a small apartment and seemed more interested in his new girlfriend than paying bills on time. By the time I was 17, I was working after school at a local diner. Leo took a job stocking shelves at the grocery store. We would pool our earnings to buy groceries when Mom was short on cash. "We only have each other, Bella," Leo would tell me as we counted coins on our bedroom floor. "No matter what happens, I will always have your back." That promise carried us through high school and beyond. When I decided to pursue hospitality management in college, Leo was my biggest cheerleader. He had opted to skip college and went straight into construction, working his way up from apprentice to foreman by the time he was 24. He would send me a portion of his paycheck each month to help with my textbooks and living expenses. My career path was challenging, but rewarding. I started as a front desk agent at a boutique hotel while finishing my degree. The manager noticed my dedication and promoted me to supervisor within a year. By 28, I had worked my way up to director of operations at one of the most prestigious hotels in the city. That was when I took my biggest risk. With my savings and a small business loan, I purchased a struggling historic hotel that was on the verge of foreclosure. The Serenity Grand had gorgeous architecture, but terrible management. I worked 18-hour days for 2 years straight, renovating the property and rebuilding its reputation. Leo was there every step of the way. He used his construction connections to help me find reliable contractors at fair prices. On weekends, he would come by with his crew to handle small projects free of charge. "Consider it an investment in our future," he would say with a wink. The Serenity Grand became profitable in its 3rd year under my ownership. I used that success to secure funding for a second location, then a third. By the time I turned 31, I had 5 luxury hotels in my portfolio and had launched Pinnacle Catering, a high-end food service company that specialized in weddings and corporate events. Throughout my entrepreneurial journey, Leo remained my rock. He celebrated each milestone and consoled me through every setback. When a pipe burst at the Serenity Boston location, causing thousands in water damage, Leo drove 3 hours in the middle of the night to help supervise the emergency repairs. Our parents took notice of our success, but in different ways. Dad suddenly wanted to reconnect, inviting us to dinner at expensive restaurants and introducing us to his business associates. Mom became oddly competitive, comparing her modest achievements to our lucky breaks. Neither of them acknowledged that their children had succeeded despite their absence, not because of their support. Then, Victoria Davenport entered the picture. Leo met her at a charity golf tournament where my catering company was providing the lunch service. She was beautiful, polished, and came from old money. Her father owned a chain of car dealerships across the Northeast, and her mother was on the board of several prestigious cultural foundations. From the beginning, something felt off about Victoria. She spoke to the catering staff with a dismissive tone that made me uncomfortable. When Leo introduced us, her smile did not reach her eyes. "Oh, you are the little sister who works in hotels. How quaint," she said, looking around as if searching for someone more important to talk to. Leo was completely smitten. Within weeks, he was spending all his free time with Victoria. She introduced him to her country club friends and took him to exclusive restaurants where the waitstaff treated him like an outsider. Gradually, I noticed changes in my brother. He started using phrases like, "the right people," and "our kind of establishment." He traded his reliable pickup truck for a luxury SUV he could barely afford. Our weekly sibling dinners became monthly, then rare occurrences. When we did get together, Victoria usually accompanied him, checking her watch and sighing loudly when our conversations drifted to childhood memories or inside jokes she could not participate in. Victoria and her mother, Beatrice, made no secret of their disdain for me. At a dinner celebrating Leo's birthday, Beatrice asked pointed questions about my little hotel business and seemed disappointed when I explained the scale of my operations. "Well, I suppose anyone can succeed in America these days," she said with a tight smile. "Though there is a difference between new money and established families." Victoria nodded in agreement. "It must be exhausting working in service, all those complaints and dirty rooms." She shuddered delicately. "I could never." I tried to explain that, as the owner, I rarely cleaned rooms myself anymore, but Leo interrupted. "Isabella has always been a hard worker," he said, as if apologizing for my character trait. "She will probably sell the business once she settles down and starts a family." The comment stung. Leo knew how passionate I was about my career. I had never expressed any desire to settle down or sell my companies. In that moment, I realized how far he had drifted from the brother who once knew me better than anyone. Despite the growing distance, I still loved Leo fiercely. I told myself that his behavior was a phase, that he was just trying to fit into Victoria's world. Surely the brother who had held my hand at crosswalks was still in there somewhere. On a crisp autumn evening, Leo called me with excitement in his voice. "She said yes, Bella. Victoria agreed to marry me." His happiness was contagious, and I found myself genuinely thrilled for him despite my reservations about his fiancée. "That is wonderful news, Leo. Tell me everything. How did you propose?" I curled up on my sofa, ready to hear the romantic details. Leo launched into the story of his elaborate proposal at the Davenport family's summer home in the Hampton. He had arranged for a private chef, a string quartet, and thousands of rose petals scattered across the beach. The ring was a 4-carat diamond that had cost him nearly 6 months of savings. "It sounds perfect," I said, ignoring the knot in my stomach. The extravagance seemed unlike the practical brother I had grown up with. "Have you set a date yet?" "Victoria wants a June wedding. Her mother says the best venues book up a year in advance, so we need to start planning immediately." He paused. "There is just one problem. The places Beatrice suggested are either already booked or way beyond our budget." I could hear the stress in his voice. Leo made a good living as a construction manager, but the Davenports lived in a different financial stratosphere. I knew he was worried about measuring up to their expectations. "What about the Serenity Grand?" I suggested. "The ballroom can hold 300 guests, and the gardens would be beautiful for a June ceremony." There was silence on the other end of the line. "I do not know, Bella. Victoria has her heart set on the Rosewood or the Peninsula. The space is adequate," Beatrice conceded reluctantly. "But the color scheme is all wrong for Victoria's vision. Would you be willing to reupholster the ballroom chairs and replace the draperies? I blinked in surprise. We could certainly add chair covers and decorative elements to match your color palette, I offered. Complete reupholster of 200 chairs would be quite costly and unnecessary. Victoria pursed her lips. Mother, perhaps we should continue looking at the rosewood. Leo shot me a pleading look. I recognized that expression from our childhood when he needed me to compromise to keep the peace. With a deep breath, I smiled at my future sister-in-law. Why don't you show me your Pinterest board? I am sure we can find creative solutions to transform the space into exactly what you are envisioning. That concession opened the floodgates. Over the next hour, Victoria detailed her dream wedding, which seemed to have been lifted straight from a royal ceremony. She wanted imported flowers, custom lighting installations, a champagne fountain, and a 10-tier cake. When Marco discreetly provided a preliminary estimate, Leo went pale. Even with my owner's discount, the wedding would cost well over $100,000. That was when I made a decision that would change everything. As my gift to you both, I said, I would like to cover the venue and catering deposit, $65,000 toward your special day. Leo's eyes widened. Bella, that is too generous. We cannot accept that. But Victoria and Beatrice exchanged glances. That would be lovely, Victoria said quickly. We accept your generous offer. Even for a successful business owner like myself, $65,000 was a significant amount. It represented the profit from several months of operations, but I told myself it was worth it to support my brother and perhaps build a bridge with my new extended family. The planning process began immediately. Victoria hired Charlotte Evans, one of the city's most exclusive wedding planners, to coordinate the details. I expected to be included in the major decisions given my financial contribution and ownership of the venue, but I quickly discovered I was mistaken. Victoria scheduled tastings with my catering team without inviting me. Charlotte sent emails about architectural changes to the ballroom without copying me on the correspondence. When I asked Leo about being excluded, he seemed uncomfortable. Victoria just wants to make sure everything is perfect, he explained. She feels there might be a conflict of interest if you are too involved since it is your business. I swallowed my hurt feelings and tried to respect their process. However, the situation became increasingly difficult as Victoria and Beatrice made demanding and often unreasonable requests. They insisted that my staff remove a historic chandelier from the ballroom because it did not match Victoria's color scheme. They demanded that the kitchen create 15 different sample menus before making a selection. They scheduled appointments with my already overworked venue coordinator at odd hours, often canceling at the last minute. Through it all, I maintained my professionalism. I wanted this wedding to be perfect for Leo, even if it meant tolerating Victoria's bridal veil behavior. My staff, loyal to me, did their best to accommodate the endless demands, though I could see the strain in their faces. You are a saint, Marco told me after a particularly difficult meeting with Beatrice. If she were not your future family, I would have shown her the door weeks ago. The $65,000 deposit was officially processed 6 months before the wedding date. I signed the paperwork myself, specifying that it covered the venue rental, basic catering package, and hotel rooms for the wedding party. Additional costs for upgrades, special requests, and guest accommodations would be billed separately. As the wedding date approached, I expected to receive my formal invitation. When the 3-month mark passed with no envelope in my mailbox, I casually mentioned it to Leo during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. Oh, the invitations went out last week, he said vaguely. Victoria handled the guest list. I am sure yours is on the way. Another month passed. No invitation arrived. I told myself there must have been a mix-up with the mail, or that perhaps they assumed I did not need a formal invitation since I was so closely involved with the venue. Still, a sense of unease began to grow in the pit of my stomach. The first truly alarming sign came when my cousin Clara called to thank me for her invitation to Leo's wedding. The invitation is gorgeous, she gushed. That gold foil embossing must have cost a fortune, and the handwritten note from Victoria was such a nice touch. My heart sank. I had received neither an invitation nor a handwritten note. When I checked with other family members, I discovered they had all received their invitations weeks ago. That evening, I called Leo directly. "Is there something I should know about the wedding?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everyone else seems to have received their invitations." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Victoria has been handling the guest list," he said finally. "I will check with her and get back to you."
3 days later, I still had not heard from him. I decided to take a more direct approach and texted him. "Need to finalize my attendance details for your wedding. Should I bring a +1? What color dress would coordinate with the wedding party?" His response was vague and evasive. "Still working out some details. We'll let you know soon." Around the same time, I noticed other concerning patterns. The bridal shower had apparently happened the previous weekend, but I had not been invited. Photos appeared on social media showing Leo, Victoria, and both families at what looked like an engagement photo shoot in the botanical gardens. Again, I had not been included or even informed.
During a routine check-in with my hotel staff about the wedding arrangements, I learned that Victoria had requested a meeting to review the seating chart for the reception. Curious, I asked to see a copy. My name was nowhere to be found. "There must be a mistake," I told my events coordinator. "I am the groom's sister. The Serenity Grand was just rated above both in Luxury Travel magazine," I pointed out. "And as the owner's brother, you would get preferential booking and significant discounts." After more hesitation, Leo promised to discuss it with Victoria. 3 days later, he called back. "Victoria will consider the Serenity Grand, but she wants to see it first, and she is concerned about the catering. Her mother knows several celebrity chefs." "Tell her Pinnacle Catering can create any menu she desires," I said, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. "We have 2 Michelin-trained chefs on staff." The tour of the Serenity Grand was tense. Victoria and Beatrice walked through the grand ballroom with critical eyes, whispering to each other and taking notes. My hotel manager, Marco, presented our most luxurious wedding package while I showed them the bridal suite with its panoramic city views. She looked uncomfortable. Miss Davenport was very specific about the seating arrangements. She personally reviewed each name multiple times. The situation came to a head when our parents organized a family dinner 1 month before the wedding. It was the first time in years that both my mother and father would be in the same room, a testament to the significance of Leo's marriage. The dinner was held at an upscale restaurant downtown with Leo, Victoria, both sets of parents, and me in attendance. From the moment we sat down, the tension was palpable. Victoria kept whispering to her mother and shooting glances in my direction. When the conversation turned to wedding details, they spoke in vague terms, changing the subject whenever I asked specific questions. Beatrice's smile did not reach her eyes. "Yes, but there is a difference between serving the elite and being one of them, is there not?" The implication was clear. In their eyes, I was the help, not a social equal. I looked at Leo, expecting him to defend me, but he was studying his plate intently, avoiding eye contact. My mother, perhaps sensing my distress, attempted to change the subject. "Isabella has been so generous with her contribution to the wedding. The venue looks absolutely stunning." Victoria's response was swift and cutting. "Yes, the financial arrangement has been helpful, though we have had to make substantial upgrades to bring the space up to standard." I felt as if I had been slapped. My flagship hotel, the jewel of my business empire, was being described as substandard by a woman who had never worked a day in her life. "The Serenity Grand is a 5-star establishment," I said evenly. "We host diplomats, celebrities, and yes, society weddings on a regular basis." "Of course you do, dear." Beatrice patted my hand condescendingly. "And we appreciate your establishment's effort to accommodate our vision." After dinner, I tried to speak with Leo privately, but Victoria intercepted us. Leo, darling, we need to discuss the rehearsal dinner with Daddy, she said, pulling him away. The look she gave me was triumphant, almost smug. Later that week, I received a disturbing message from a friend who worked at the country club where Victoria was a member. She had overheard Victoria laughing with her bridesmaids about the hotel girl who thought she was invited to the wedding. She actually thinks she will be sitting at the family table, Victoria had reportedly said. As if we would want someone like her front and center in the photos. But we need to keep her happy until the big day since she controls the venue. Another bridesmaid had asked, "What about the money she contributed?" $65,000 is a lot to take without including her. Victoria's response chilled me. That money is already spent. What is she going to do? Ask for it back? Besides, Leo says she is loaded. She will get over it. I confronted Leo that evening, calling him and demanding answers. Am I invited to your wedding or not? I asked bluntly. Because from what I am hearing, Victoria has other ideas. Leo sighed heavily. Bella, it is complicated. Victoria and her mother have very specific ideas about the guest list. They are concerned about maintaining a certain atmosphere. An atmosphere that does not include your only sister, the sister who gave you $65,000 toward this wedding? My voice cracked with emotion. You do not understand the pressure I am under, Leo said defensively. Victoria's family moves in important circles. This wedding could open doors for both of us. Since when do you care about important circles? I demanded. What happened to the brother who used to say we only needed each other? People grow up, Isabella. They change. Maybe you should try it sometime instead of holding on to the past. His words were like daggers to my heart. Is that Victoria talking or you? I asked quietly. This conversation is not productive, he said, his voice cold. I need to go. Victoria and I have an appointment with the florist. As I hung up the phone, I felt a deep sense of loss. The brother I had known and loved my entire life was slipping away, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Still, I clung to the hope that this was temporary madness, that the real Leo would return once the wedding stress had passed. During the main course, Beatrice made a comment that sent a chill down my spine. It is so important to have the right atmosphere at a wedding, she said, swirling her wine glass. The proper guests, the right connections. A wedding is not just a celebration. It is a statement about your place in society. Victoria nodded in agreement. Some people simply do not understand the social implications of a high-profile event, she added, looking directly at me. Running hotels is one thing, but appreciating true elegance is quite another. My father, never particularly perceptive about social dynamics, laughed uncomfortably. Isabella understands elegance just fine. Her hotels are top-rated in the luxury category. I decided to make one last attempt to salvage our relationship. I sent Leo a heartfelt email, reminding him of all we had been through together and expressing my hurt at being excluded from his important day. I assured him that I would continue to ensure the wedding venue and catering were perfect, regardless of my personal feelings, because that was what family did for each other. His response was brief and formal. Thank you for your understanding. I will speak with Victoria about the guest list situation. Days passed with no further communication. The wedding was now just 1 week away, and I had begun to accept that I might not be attending my own brother's ceremony, despite providing the venue and a substantial financial contribution. Then came the phone call that would change everything. The world seemed to stop. I gripped the hallway wall for support. Excuse me? Charlotte cleared her throat uncomfortably. The family has decided to revise the guest list. Your attendance is no longer required. However, they wish to keep the venue and catering arrangements as planned, utilizing the deposit you already paid. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. I was in the middle of a budget meeting with my executive team, but decided to answer in case it was related to the wedding. Hello, is this Isabella Ross? A professional female voice inquired. Yes, speaking, I replied, stepping out of the conference room. This is Charlotte Evans, the wedding planner for the Ross Davenport ceremony scheduled at the Serenity Grand next Saturday. Her tone was crisp and businesslike. I am calling regarding your deposit payment of $65,000. My heart skipped a beat. Yes. Is there an issue with the payment? I had processed it myself months ago, but perhaps there was some administrative problem. Not exactly, Charlotte hesitated. I have been instructed by the family to inform you that your invitation to the wedding has been cancelled. However, they would like to retain the deposit you provided. Which family? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Who exactly made this decision? Miss Davenport and her mother provided the instruction, Charlotte replied. I was told that Mr. Rossi is aware and has agreed to the arrangement. Leo had agreed to uninvite me from his wedding but keep my $65,000. My own brother. The same brother who once gave me half his sandwich every day at school because he knew I was too shy to ask for more food. The brother who held my hand at our grandmother's funeral and promised we would always have each other. May I ask why? I managed, fighting to keep my voice steady. Victoria paused again, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. I was informed that your presence might distract from the event's intended atmosphere. Miss Davenport felt that the family dynamics might create tension on her special day. Family dynamics, I repeated incredulously. I am his sister, his only sibling. Miss Davenport also mentioned something about your professional connection to the venue, potentially confusing guests about your role. Charlotte sounded like she was reading from a script. She specifically mentioned concerns about you being perceived as staff rather than family, given your ownership of the establishment. The cruelty of the statement knocked the wind out of me. After years of hard work building my business from nothing, my success was being used against me. I was too associated with service industry work to be worthy of attending my brother's wedding. Did Leo say this? I asked, needing to know if these were his words or Victoria's. I have not spoken directly with Mr. Ross about this matter, Charlotte admitted. The instruction came from Miss Davenport, but she assured me that Mr. Ross was in agreement. I closed my eyes, trying to process the betrayal. And the $65,000 I contributed? They expect to keep that money while excluding me from the event? Yes, Charlotte confirmed, sounding increasingly uncomfortable. The deposit is considered non-refundable at this point, as stated in the contract. Miss Davenport mentioned that you had presented it as a gift, not contingent on your attendance. A wave of anger washed over me, clearing away the shock and hurt. This was beyond inconsiderate. It was calculating and cruel. They had used me for my venue, my catering services, and my money, all while planning to exclude me from the actual celebration. Miss Ross, are you still there? Charlotte asked after a long silence. Yes, I said, my voice suddenly calm and clear. I want to confirm that I understand correctly. The bride and her mother have decided I am not welcome at my brother's wedding, despite my significant financial contribution and the fact that the event is being held at my property, and my brother has apparently agreed to this arrangement. That is my understanding, yes, Charlotte replied cautiously. I took a deep breath. Charlotte, I appreciate your calling me directly. I am guessing you did not know that I am the owner of the Serenity Grand and Pinnacle Catering. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. No, I was not aware of that connection. Miss Davenport introduced you only as Mr. Ross's sister, who had contributed to the wedding fund. I see, I said, a plan already forming in my mind. In that case, I have a message I would like you to deliver to Miss Davenport and my brother. Of course, Charlotte replied, her professional demeanor slipping as she realized the precarious position she was in. Please tell them that I said to cancel the entire wedding. Charlotte gasped. But Miss Ross, you cannot. You are not the bride or groom. You do not have the authority to cancel the event. No, I agreed, but I own the venue, the catering company, and the hotel chain they booked for out-of-town guests. and according to Section 12 of the contract they signed, I reserve the right to cancel any event that violates our company's core values, which include respect and integrity. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. But the deposits, the guests, everything is arranged, Charlotte stammered. Yes, it is unfortunate timing, I said coolly. Please inform Miss Davenport and my brother that unless I receive a formal apology and invitation to the wedding by 5 p.m. today, the Serenity Grand will no longer be available for their event. All deposits will be forfeited as per the cancellation policy they agreed to. This is highly irregular, Charlotte protested. I have never encountered such a situation in my career. Neither have I admitted. But then I have never been uninvited from my brother's wedding while being expected to fund it either. Please deliver my message promptly. I ended the call and leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. Part of me could not believe what I had just done. Another part knew it was long overdue. For too long, I had allowed Victoria and her family to treat me with disrespect, while I smiled and accommodated their demands. For too long, I had watched my brother transform into someone I barely recognized. The time for passivity was over. If Leo wanted to choose Victoria's elitist values over our lifelong bond, that was his right. But he would not do it in my venue, with my money, while excluding me from the celebration. Within minutes, my phone began to ring. It was Leo. I let it go to voicemail. Then Victoria called, then Beatrice. I ignored them all, returning to my budget meeting with a serene smile that confused my executive team. Is everything all right? Marco asked, noticing my changed demeanor. Actually, yes, I replied. I think everything is finally becoming very clear. By 4:30 that afternoon, my office phone, cell phone, and email were flooded with messages. Charlotte had apparently delivered my ultimatum, unleashing a storm of panic. The wedding was only 10 days away. Over 200 guests had confirmed their attendance. Deposits had been paid to florists, photographers, and entertainers. At precisely 4:55, there was a commotion in the hotel lobby. Leo had arrived with Victoria and both sets of parents in tow. It was time to face the consequences of my stand. I instructed my assistant to escort the wedding party to my private conference room rather than my office. This was no longer a family matter, but a business dispute, and I wanted the setting to reflect that distinction. When I entered the room 5 minutes later, the tension was palpable. Victoria was red-faced and teary, clutching her mother's hand. Beatrice looked apoplectic, her lips pressed into a thin line. My parents appeared confused and distressed. And Leo, my beloved brother, looked like a stranger, his face a mask of anger and embarrassment. What the hell do you think you are doing? He demanded, as soon as I closed the door behind me. I remained standing, hands clasped in front of me. Enforcing the terms of our contract, I replied calmly, and standing up for myself, finally. Victoria's father, Henry Davenport, stepped forward. He was a large man accustomed to intimidating others with his physical presence. This is outrageous. We have a binding agreement. You cannot simply cancel a wedding with 10 days' notice. I met his gaze steadily. Actually, I can. Section 12 of the venue contract clearly states that the Serenity Grand reserves the right to cancel any event that violates our ethical standards or poses a reputation risk to our establishment. Ethical standards? Beatrice scoffed. What nonsense is this? Attempting to exclude the venue owner from an event while retaining her financial contribution constitutes fraud, I stated. That violates both ethical standards and, potentially, the law. We did not exclude you, Victoria protested, tears streaming down her face. We simply revised the guest list. By removing only me, I pointed out, after accepting my $65,000 contribution. My mother stepped forward, clearly confused. Isabella, what is going on? Why would you not be invited to your own brother's wedding? I looked at Leo, giving him the opportunity to explain. He avoided my gaze, staring at the carpet. Perhaps Leo or Victoria would like to explain their reasoning? I suggested after the silence stretched uncomfortably. This is a misunderstanding, Leo finally said, his voice lacking conviction. Charlotte must have confused the instructions. Charlotte Evans, who had been quietly observing from the corner of the room, straightened her spine. I followed Miss Davenport's instructions exactly as they were given to me. I was told to inform Miss Ross that her invitation had been rescinded, but that the deposit would be retained. Beatrice waved her hand dismissively. This is ridiculous. So there was a miscommunication about the guest list. It happens with large events. That is no reason to threaten the entire wedding. This was not a miscommunication, I said firmly. This was a deliberate decision to exclude me while keeping my money. You offered that money as a gift, Victoria snapped, dropping all preteens of civility. Gifts do not come with conditions. Actually, they often do, I countered, especially when the gift is a business transaction with a signed contract. Henry Davenport pulled out his cell phone. This is absurd. I am calling our attorney right now. We will sue you for breach of contract. You are welcome to do that, I replied, but the contract is quite clear about my right to cancel under these circumstances. Additionally, I have documentary evidence of the bride's intent to defraud me by accepting my financial contribution while planning to exclude me from the event. That is a serious accusation, Henry growled. Yes, it is, I agreed, almost as serious as telling your daughter it is acceptable to take $65,000 from someone and then ban them from the event they funded.
My father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. Leo, is this true? Did you agree to exclude your sister from your wedding? Leo looked trapped, his eyes darting between Victoria and me. It is complicated, he muttered. It is actually quite simple, I said, feeling a strange calm despite the chaos. Either I am welcome at my brother's wedding as a full and respected family member, or there will be no wedding at the Serenity Grand. Victoria burst into fresh tears. You cannot do this. Everything is arranged. Our guests are arriving from Europe next week. The custom gown, the flowers, the band that required a 6-month deposit. I understand it is inconvenient, I acknowledged. But so is discovering that your only sibling has decided you are not good enough to attend his wedding despite your generous contribution. Beatrice turned to Leo. This is ridiculous. Call her bluff. We can find another venue. I smiled thinly. With 10 days' notice in the height of wedding season, that seems unlikely, but you are welcome to try. Of course, you would forfeit the deposit here, and most other venues will require full payment upfront for such a last-minute booking. The color drained from Victoria's face as she realized the impossibility of the situation. Daddy, do something. Henry Davenport looked thoughtful. Perhaps we can come to some arrangement. What exactly do you want, Miss Ross? Respect, I said simply. A sincere apology and acknowledgement that what you planned to do was wrong, and a guarantee that I will be treated as the family that I am at this event. This is extortion, Beatrice hissed. No, I corrected her. This is a boundary. I have spent months accommodating every demand, absorbing every slight, and financing a significant portion of this wedding. In return, I have been treated with contempt and ultimately excluded entirely. That ends today. My mother moved to stand beside me, surprising everyone, including myself. I agree with Isabella. What you are planning is shameful, Leo. I raised you better than this. Leo finally looked up, his expression a mix of shame and defiance. You do not understand the pressure I have been under. I understand perfectly, I replied. You have been so desperate to impress Victoria and her family that you were willing to betray the sister who has always been there for you. The sister who helped put you through trade school, who celebrated every success and supported you through every failure. Something in my words seemed to penetrate the fog he had been living in. For the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of the real Leo in his eyes. I never wanted to hurt you, Bella, he said quietly. Yet, you were willing to ban me from your wedding while keeping my money, I pointed out. How did you think that would make me feel? I thought He hesitated. I thought you would understand that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the bigger picture. And I was the sacrifice? I asked, my voice breaking slightly despite my resolve to remain composed. Leo had no answer for that. Henry Davenport cleared his throat. Let us be practical about this. Miss Ross, if we agree to include you in the wedding as requested, will you allow the event to proceed as planned? That depends, I said, turning to face Leo directly. Is that what you want, Leo? Am I just an obligation to be tolerated, or do you actually want your only sister at your wedding? The room fell silent as everyone waited for Leo's response. This was the moment of truth, not just for the wedding, but for our relationship going forward. Leo looked at Victoria, then at me, then down at his hands. I want you there, Bella, he said finally. I always did. I just got caught up in everything. The planning, the expectations, the pressure to make everything perfect. Perfect for whom? I asked softly. He had no answer for that either. Victoria stomped her foot in frustration. This is my wedding. I should decide who attends. It is our wedding. Leo corrected her, seeming to find his voice at last. And Isabella is my sister. She should be there. She deserves to be there. The look Victoria gave him was venomous. After this stunt, you still want her there? She just threatened to ruin our entire wedding. After you tried to exclude her while keeping her money, Leo countered, standing a little straighter. Think about that, Victoria. How would you feel if someone did that to you? For perhaps the first time since I had met her, Victoria seemed genuinely speechless. Here is what is going to happen, I said, addressing the entire room. I will allow the wedding to proceed as planned with the following conditions. First, I will receive a formal written apology from the bride and groom for the attempt to exclude me. Second, I will be treated with the respect due to a family member and business owner throughout all wedding events. Third, my $65,000 contribution will be acknowledged in the wedding program as a gift from a loving sister, not simply as a venue discount. Henry Davenport nodded thoughtfully. Those terms seem reasonable given the circumstances. Father! Victoria protested. Enough, Victoria, he said firmly. Miss Ross has us over a barrel, and you know it. More importantly, she is right. What you and your mother planned was inappropriate and potentially illegal. We are fortunate she is willing to work with us at all. Beatrice looked as if she had swallowed something sour but remained silent. My parents exchanged glances, clearly processing the family drama they had walked into. Do we have an agreement? I asked, looking directly at Leo. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Yes, and Bella, I am sorry. I should have never let things get this far. It was a start, but I knew we had a long way to go to rebuild the trust that had been broken. Still, for the first time in months, I felt like I might eventually get my brother back. Then, the wedding will proceed as scheduled, I said, opening the conference room door to signal that our meeting was concluded. Charlotte will coordinate with my staff on the final details. As the group filed out, Leo lingered behind. When we were alone, he turned to me with tears in his eyes. I really am sorry, Bella. I do not know who I have become these past few months. Neither do I said honestly. But I hope you figure it out before you say I do. Marriage is hard enough when you are being true to yourself. He nodded slowly, seeming to really hear me for the first time in months. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I deserved it. That is what family does, I replied. The real kind, not the kind that only values status and appearances. As he left to join his waiting fiancée, I wondered whether the wedding would actually take place, and if it did, what kind of marriage would follow. Only time would tell. The days leading up to the wedding were tense but productive. True to my word, I ensured that every detail of the venue and catering was perfect. My staff, who had heard rumors of the confrontation, worked with renewed enthusiasm, proud that I had stood up for myself. Charlotte Evans proved to be surprisingly diplomatic once the initial shock had worn off. She had clearly gained a new respect for me after learning about my ownership of the Serenity properties and witnessing my handling of the situation. "I must apologize for my part in this mess," she told me as we reviewed the final seating chart. "Had I known who you were from the beginning, I would have never agreed to make that call." "You were doing your job based on the information you had," I assured her. "Though, in the future, you might want to question clients who ask you to exclude immediate family members while keeping their money." Charlotte winced. Lesson learned, believe me. As promised, I received a formal written apology from Leo and Victoria. Leo's portion seemed heartfelt and genuinely remorseful. Victoria's contribution was stiff and clearly coached by her father's legal team, but it met the technical requirements of our agreement. The rehearsal dinner held 2 nights before the wedding was my first real test. As I entered the restaurant's private dining room, conversations hushed, and all eyes turned to me. I held my head high, wearing a designer dress that struck the perfect balance between elegant and confident. Leo immediately came to greet me, kissing my cheek and leading me to a seat of honor near the head table. Victoria remained seated, offering only a tight smile that did not reach her eyes. Beatrice Davenport made a point of avoiding me entirely, while Henry surprised me by approaching with an unexpected olive branch. "Miss Ross," he said, extending his hand. "I want to personally apologize for the unpleasantness earlier this week. In business, I have always valued directness and integrity. You displayed both, and I respect that." I accepted his handshake. "Thank you, Mr. Davenport. I appreciate your understanding." "Henry, please," he insisted. "We are about to be family after all."
Throughout the evening, I noticed Leo watching Victoria with an increasingly thoughtful expression. She was in full bride mode, accepting compliments and directing conversations with practice's charm. But whenever the attention was elsewhere, her smile would slip and she would whisper sharp instructions to the waitstaff or shoot irritated glances at guests who failed to follow her conversational lead. After dinner, Leo found me on the restaurant's terrace, where I had stepped out for a moment of peace. "You look beautiful tonight, Bella," he said, joining me at the railing. "Thank you. It is a lovely evening." He nodded, staring out at the city lights. "Do you remember when we used to sit on the fire escape of Mom's apartment and plan our futures?" I smiled at the memory. "You were going to build skyscrapers, and I was going to own a small bed and breakfast with a garden. Life turned out differently than we expected," he mused. "Better in some ways," I said, "though I still might get that garden someday." We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the first we had shared in months. "I keep thinking about what you said," Leo finally admitted, "about being true to myself." I waited, giving him space to continue. "I do not know if I am," he said softly. "Everything happened so fast with Victoria. She was beautiful, sophisticated, connected. Dating her felt like being admitted to an exclusive club I never knew existed."
"And now," I prompted gently. Before he could respond, Victoria's voice rang out from the doorway. "There you are! Everyone is asking where you disappeared to." The mask slipped back into place as Leo turned to his fiancée with a practice's smile. "Just getting some air with Bella. We will be right in." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly as she looked between us. "Do not be too long. The Harrington are about to leave, and they came all the way from London." After she retreated inside, Leo gave me an apologetic look. "I should go." "Of course," I said, touching his arm gently. "But Leo, whatever you decide, I will support you. That is what real family does."
The day of the wedding arrived with perfect June weather. The Serenity Grand had been transformed into a floral wonderland, with white roses and orchids adorning every surface. The ballroom gleamed with candlelight and crystal, exactly as Victoria had envisioned. As a family member rather than just the venue owner, I was seated in the front row for the ceremony. Beatrice Davenport made her displeasure known with pointed glares, but Henry nodded respectfully when our eyes met. The music began, and the procession started. Leo stood at the altar looking handsome in his tuxedo, but noticeably tense. As the bridal march played and Victoria appeared at the back of the hall on her father's arm, a collective gasp rose from the guests. She was undeniably stunning in a custom gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. The ceremony proceeded according to plan until the minister reached the pivotal question. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. In the brief silence that followed, Leo looked directly at me. Our eyes locked, and I saw something shift in his expression. A clarity, a decision, a return to himself. "I have something to say," he announced, his voice steady. The crowd murmured in shock. Victoria froze beside him, her bouquet trembling in her grip. "Leo?" the minister prompted uncertainly. He sighed heavily. "Now I am standing on a terrace with my sister, hiding from my own rehearsal dinner, wondering if I am making the biggest mistake of my life." My heart ached for him, but I knew this was his decision to make. "Cold feet are normal before a wedding." "This feels like more than cold feet," he confessed. "The way she and her mother treated you, it opened my eyes to things I have been ignoring. The way she speaks to servers when she thinks no one important is watching, the comments she makes about my friends from the construction company, the constant pressure to improve myself by changing everything about who I am. Those are valid concerns," I acknowledged carefully. "But the wedding is in 2 days," he continued, running a hand through his hair. "Everything is paid for. Guests are arriving from all over. Canceling now would be a disaster. More of a disaster than a divorce in a year, or 5 years, or 10 years with children involved?" I asked softly.
Before he could respond, Victoria's voice rang out from the doorway. "There you are. Everyone is asking where you disappeared to." The mask slipped back into place as Leo turned to his fiancée with a practiced smile. "Just getting some air with Bella. We will be right in." Victoria's eyes narrowed slightly as she looked between us. "Do not be too long. The Harringtons are about to leave, and they came all the way from London." After she retreated inside, Leo gave me an apologetic look. "I should go." "Of course," I said, touching his arm gently. "But Leo, whatever you decide, I will support you. That is what real family does."
The day of the wedding arrived with perfect June weather. The Serenity Grand had been transformed into a floral wonderland, with white roses and orchids adorning every surface. The ballroom gleamed with candlelight and crystal, exactly as Victoria had envisioned. As a family member, rather than just the venue owner, I was seated in the front row for the ceremony. Beatrice Davenport made her displeasure known with pointed glares, but Henry nodded respectfully when our eyes met. The music began, and the procession started. Leo stood at the altar, looking handsome in his tuxedo, but noticeably tense. As the bridal march played, and Victoria appeared at the back of the hall on her father's arm, a collective gasp rose from the guests. She was undeniably stunning in a custom gown that probably cost more than most people's cars.
The ceremony proceeded according to plan until the minister reached the pivotal question. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. In the brief silence that followed, Leo looked directly at me. Our eyes locked, and I saw something shift in his expression. A clarity, a decision, a return to himself. "I have something to say," he announced, his voice steady. The crowd murmured in shock. Victoria froze beside him, her bouquet trembling in her grip. "Leo?" the minister prompted uncertainly. "I cannot do this," Leo said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not like this, not when I am not being true to myself or to the values my sister and I were raised with." Gasps and whispers rippled through the audience. Victoria's face contorted with rage and embarrassment. "What are you doing?" she hissed. James turned to face her directly. "I am sorry, Victoria. You are beautiful and accomplished, and you will make someone very happy someday. But that someone is not me. I have been trying to become someone I am not to fit into your world. And in the process, I nearly lost the person who has always been there for me." He looked at me again, and I saw my brother, my real brother, in his eyes once more. "This wedding is canceled," he announced to the stunned crowd. "I apologize for the inconvenience and thank you all for coming." What followed was chaos. Victoria collapsed into her mother's arms, wailing dramatically. Beatrice shouted about lawsuits and ruined reputations. Henry Davenport, surprisingly, remained calm, directing his attention to managing his wife and daughter's reactions rather than threatening Leo. My brother walked straight to me, took my hand, and led me out of the ballroom, away from the uproar. In the quiet of my office, he finally broke down. "I cannot believe I just did that," he said, half laughing, half crying. "Did you see their faces?" "I did," I confirmed, handing him a glass of water. "That was quite an exit." "I am going to pay for it, financially and socially," he acknowledged. But the moment the minister asked that question, I knew I could not go through with it. All I could think about was how Victoria and her mother treated you, how they were willing to exclude you while taking your money. And I realized that if I married her, I would be endorsing that behavior. I would be becoming one of them. "What will you do now?" I asked. He shrugged, looking suddenly lighter despite the circumstances. "Go back to my apartment, return to work, start over. It will be embarrassing for a while, but at least I will be living authentically." I squeezed his hand. "I am proud of you, Leo. That took real courage." "I learned it from my little sister," he said with a warm smile. "The hotel girl who built an empire while staying true to herself." In the following days, Leo faced the fallout from his decision. The Davenports demanded repayment for their portion of the wedding expenses, which he agreed to handle over time. Some of Victoria's society friends spread unkind rumors about him, but his true friends stood by his side. As for me, I had my brother back, and that was worth more than any business deal or social connection. The Serenity Grand suffered no lasting damage to its reputation. In fact, Charlotte Evans later told me that my handling of the situation had earned respect in professional circles. "Everyone knows the Davenports can be difficult clients," she confided. "The fact that you stood your ground while maintaining professionalism has only enhanced your standing." 1 month after the non-wedding, Leo and I resumed our tradition of Sunday brunches, something we had not done since Victoria entered the picture. As we shared pancakes and coffee, he looked more like himself than he had in years. "I got a call from Beatrice Davenport yesterday," he mentioned casually. "She wanted to let me know that Victoria is dating a hedge fund manager now. Apparently, they met at a charity gala 2 weeks after our wedding was supposed to happen." "That was fast," I remarked. Leo laughed. "I am not surprised. I think I was always more of an accessory than a partner to her. The successful contractor with the rugged good looks who could be molded into an acceptable society husband. And now? Now I am dating someone new too," he admitted with a sheepish smile. "Remember Chloe from the city planning office? We always got along when I was submitting permits. She called to check on me after hearing about the wedding, and we ended up talking for hours." "Chloe is wonderful," I said sincerely. "Smart, kind, and she values you for who you actually are." "That makes all the difference," Leo agreed. "She wants to meet you properly, by the way. I told her all about my amazing sister who saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life." "I would love that," I said, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer sunshine streaming through the window. The wounds caused by Victoria and her family would take time to fully heal, but Leo and I were rebuilding our bond, stronger and wiser than before. Sometimes it takes nearly losing someone to realize how valuable they truly are. 6 months after the wedding that never was, I sat in my office at the Serenity Grand reviewing the quarterly financial reports. The hotel chain was thriving, with bookings at an all-time high and a waiting list for Pinnacle Catering that stretched into the next year.
A knock at the door interrupted my concentration. It was Marco, my hotel manager, with a strange expression on his face. "Victoria Davenport is in the lobby," he announced. "She is asking to speak with you." I set down my pen in surprise. "Victoria? Did she say what this is about?" "No, but she seems different, less imperial, if you know what I mean." Curiosity got the better of me. "Send her up." When Victoria entered my office, I barely recognized her. Gone was the perfectly coiffed society princess with designer clothes and flawless makeup. This Victoria wore simple jeans, a sweater, and minimal cosmetics. Her hair was pulled back in a casual ponytail. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, her voice lacking the entitled edge I remembered. "I know this must be unexpected." "Please, have a seat," I offered, gesturing to the chair across from my desk. "What can I do for you?" Victoria sat down, folding her hands nervously in her lap. "I came to apologize. Properly this time, not with some lawyer-drafted statement." I raised an eyebrow, but remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "What I did to you was inexcusable," she admitted. "Trying to exclude you from Leo's wedding while keeping your money was not just rude, it was cruel and potentially criminal. I was so caught up in creating the perfect society wedding that I lost sight of basic human decency." "What brought on this revelation?" I asked, genuinely curious. She sighed. "After Leo left me at the altar, I was angry and humiliated. I blamed everyone but myself. I quickly started dating Preston, a hedge fund manager my mother introduced me to, thinking I could just replace Leo and move on." "I heard about that," I acknowledged.
Preston proposed after just 6 weeks, Victoria continued. "My mother was thrilled. His family has even more money than we do. But then I overheard him talking to his friends about me." Her voice cracked slightly. "He said I was high maintenance but good arm candy for client meetings. He said he could train me to be the perfect corporate wife." "That sounds painful," I said, feeling an unexpected twinge of sympathy. "It was a wake-up call," she admitted. "For the first time, I saw myself through someone else's eyes, and I did not like what I saw. I broke off the engagement and started therapy. My mother was furious, but my father supported my decision, surprisingly. Henry seemed to have more self-awareness than Beatrice, I observed."
Victoria nodded. "Dad pulled me aside after the therapy announcement and told me something I will never forget. He said, 'Victoria, I indulged your mother's social climbing because I thought it made her happy, but it turned her into someone I barely recognize, and now it is doing the same to you.'" "Powerful words," I murmured. "It has been a difficult few months of self-examination," she continued. "I have had to confront some ugly truths about myself and how I treated people, especially you and Leo. The therapist helped me see that my behavior stemmed from deep insecurity. Despite all the privilege I grew up with, I never felt good enough on my own merits." I studied her closely, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. To my surprise, I found none. "I do not expect forgiveness," Victoria said, meeting my gaze directly. "I just wanted you to know that I recognize the harm I caused and I am working to become a better person." "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "Genuine apologies are rare." "There is one more thing," she added, reaching into her purse. "This is for you." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $65,000. "Your deposit," she explained. "It should have been returned to you immediately after the wedding was canceled. It was wrong of me to try to keep it." I stared at the check in surprise. "Thank you. This is unexpected." "It is the right thing to do," she said simply, standing to leave. "That is all I wanted to say. Thank you for seeing me." As she turned to go, I found myself asking, "Have you spoken to Leo?" She paused at the door. I thought about reaching out, but I decided that would be selfish. He seems happy with Chloe from what I have heard. He deserves that happiness without me complicating things. With that, she was gone, leaving me to ponder the strange encounter. People could change, it seemed, if they were willing to face their mistakes honestly. That evening, I met Leo and Chloe for dinner at my newest hotel property. They were glowing with happiness, clearly well matched in values and temperament. Chloe was warm, intelligent, and treated the waitstaff with genuine kindness, something I noticed immediately. "You will never guess who came to see me today," I told Leo over dessert. When I recounted Victoria's visit and apology, his eyes widened in disbelief. Victoria Davenport admitted she was wrong and returned the money voluntarily? "Are you sure it was really her and not an imposter?" I laughed. "It was her, though a very different version from the woman you almost married." Leo shook his head in wonder. "People can surprise you, I guess. Though I am grateful every day that I did not go through with the wedding." Chloe squeezed his hand affectionately. "So am I, selfishly. The whole experience taught me something important," I reflected. For years, I defined success by my business achievements. I worked endless hours building the Serenity brand, sometimes at the expense of personal relationships. I took pride in being self-sufficient, never needing to ask for help. "You have always been the strong one," Leo agreed. "But strength is not about handling everything alone," I continued. "Real strength is knowing when to stand up for yourself, when to set boundaries, and when to walk away from situations that diminish your worth. If I had not found the courage to confront you and Victoria about the wedding exclusion, I might still be letting people take advantage of my generosity while treating me as less than. I am sorry I put you in that position," Leo said quietly. "We both learned from it," I assured him. "And our relationship is stronger for having weathered that storm." In the months that followed, I made changes in both my personal and professional life. I began volunteering with a mentorship program for young women entrepreneurs, sharing not just business advice, but lessons about self-worth and healthy boundaries. My experiences with Victoria and her family had shown me how many people, especially women, struggle with standing up for themselves in both personal and professional contexts. I also reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my workaholic years, finding joy in relationships that had nothing to do with business advantage. Leo and I instituted a strict no work talk policy for our Sunday brunches, focusing instead on our lives, dreams, and the simple pleasure of sibling companionship. Perhaps most surprisingly, I developed a cordial relationship with Henry Davenport. After Victoria's apology, he reached out to discuss a potential business collaboration. Over lunch, he confided that my handling of the wedding situation had earned his respect. "I built my car dealership empire by recognizing talent and integrity," he told me. "You demonstrated both. Beatrice and Victoria may have wealth and social connections, but you have something more valuable: character." The $65,000 check from Victoria went into a special fund I created to help couples who wanted meaningful weddings without financial strain. The True Love, True Values grant provided venue and catering services at the Serenity Grand for couples who demonstrated authentic commitment to each other and their communities. As for my brother, he and Chloe became engaged a year after the non-wedding disaster. They planned a simple ceremony in the garden of my newest hotel property, with only close friends and family in attendance. When Leo asked me to be his best woman, I accepted with tears of joy. On the morning of his wedding, as I helped him straighten his tie, Leo looked at me with gratitude in his eyes. "You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life," he said. "Not just by stopping the wedding with Victoria, but by reminding me of who I really am and what actually matters." "That is what family does," I replied, echoing the words I had spoken during our confrontation a year earlier. The real kind, not the kind that only values status and appearances. The lesson I learned through that painful experience was profound. True self-worth comes not from what you accomplish or who accepts you, but from honoring your own values and refusing to compromise them for approval or advantage. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to say no when someone tries to diminish your worth. The path to healing began with that difficult stand, continued through rebuilding authentic connections, and led to a life richer in meaning than I could have imagined. By refusing to accept disrespect, I had not only preserved my dignity, but helped others, including Victoria, confront important truths about themselves. Life offers many tests of character. The wedding that never happened became one of mine, revealing strengths I did not know I possessed and values I would never again compromise. In standing up for myself, I discovered that self-respect is the foundation upon which all meaningful relationships must be built. You cannot control how others treat you, but you always have the power to decide what treatment you will accept. Sometimes saying no is the first step towards saying yes to the life you truly deserve. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when someone tried to take advantage of your generosity? Share your story in the comments below, and if this resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more life lessons, and share with someone who might need this reminder of their own worth. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your value is not determined by those who fail to see it.